cursed. It is the first time that word is ever spoken out loud. And the strangest part is who says it. Not a villain, not a witch bent over a boiling pot. Not a sorcerer scratching a name into clay. The first curse in the history of the world comes out of the mouth of God himself, in a garden while the soil is still new under his feet, and blood has not yet learned how to dry. There is a man hiding in the bushes. There is a woman who cannot meet his eyes. And there is a creature in the dirt. And God looks at that creature and says one word that will echo down every single page that follows. Cursed. And here's the thing almost nobody tells you. From that moment on, the entire Bible is haunted by it. The word follows you everywhere. It is spoken over snakes and over soil. It is spoken over a murderer with his brother's blood still on his hands. A mother takes one onto her own body to protect her son. A broken man sits in ashes and curses the day he was born. It is hired out for gold by a king who wants a whole nation wiped off the earth. It is screamed by a giant at a shepherd boy and thrown like stones at a fleeing king. It is hung over a ruined city like a sword on a thread. It clings to a servant's skin and turns it white as snow. A whole nation stands between two mountains and shouts it down on their own heads. And then at the very end, in the most shocking reversal in all of Scripture, the curse lands fully, deliberately, with nothing held back, on the one person in history who never earned a single drop of it. So tonight you are going to follow that one word, every place it falls, every person it touches, from the dirt of Eden to a hill outside Jerusalem to the final page of the last book, where God makes a promise so quiet you could miss it. 11 words, and there shall be no more curse. But you cannot understand that promise until you understand the wound. Now you need to know something about the world this word was born into, because we have lost it. To you, a curse is a figure of speech, something you mutter when you stub your toe in the dark. To the ancient world, a curse was technology. It was a weapon. In Egypt, the priests of Pharaoh would take a clay bowl or a little clay figure, and they would write on it the name of an enemy, a rival king, a rebel city, a man they wanted dead. We have dug these out of the sand. Scholars call them the execration texts. And once the name was written, the priest would smash the bowl, shatter it on the stones, because they believed that whatever you did to the name, you did to the man. Break the bowl, break the enemy. That is how seriously the ancient world took the spoken word. Words were not air. Words were live wires. So when God speaks a curse in Genesis, the first people to hear it did not hear poetry. They heard the most powerful force in the universe pronouncing a sentence that could not be unspoken. And that should frighten you a little, but stay with me. Because this is not a story about bad luck. This is not a story about magic words and broken bowls. This is not a story about a God who enjoys watching people suffer. This is a story about a single wound that the whole human race has been carrying since the garden, and the one place, the one terrible afternoon where that wound was finally healed. And it starts with a snake. The serpent had just talked a woman into the only thing God had told her not to do. And God comes walking in the cool of the day, and he finds the whole thing already broken. The fruit is eaten. The shame has arrived. And the first words of judgment go to the serpent. Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. The Hebrew word there is arar. It means a binding curse, to fence something in, to hem it, to shut it under a weight it cannot lift. It is the exact opposite of the other great word in the Bible, barak, to bless, to open the hands, to let life run free. From the very first page, you are handed the two directions a human life can go, open or shut, blessed or bound. But listen to what God says next to that snake, because this is the thread that ties the entire Bible together. And I need you to hold it in your mind for the next hour. God says to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Stop. Read that again. Hidden inside the very first curse, in the same breath, is the very first promise. One day, someone will be born from the woman, and there will be a fight, and the serpent will strike that someone into the heel, a wound, low and bloody, but that someone will crush the serpent's head, a death blow. A heel will be struck, and a head will be crushed, and somehow those two wounds are the same event. Keep that heel in mind. We're going to come back to it on a hill at the darkest hour of an afternoon, 2,000 years later. But not yet. Then God turns to the man. And here's the part people read right past. God does not curse Adam. Look at the text. God curses the ground. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat of it. It will produce thorns and thistles for you. Do you feel the mercy buried in that? The man rebelled, and the curse falls on the dirt instead of the man. The ground takes the hit. And from that day, every thorn that ever tore your skin, every weed that choked the garden you were trying to grow, every harvest that failed in the field, all of it is the planet itself groaning under a weight it never chose. The Apostle Paul would say it like this: thousands of years later, the whole creation has been groaning, waiting to be set free. The thorns are not random. The thorns are a symptom. And hold on to thorns too, because one day a crown of them is going to be pressed down onto a human head, and a man is going to wear the curse of the ground as a crown. This is what most people miss about the opening of the Bible. The fall is not the end of the story. It is the planting of a clue. Every curse from here on is a wound, and every wound is pointing, like a compass needle that will not stop trembling, toward the one who would carry all of them at once. Now watch what happens next, because the very next chapter, the curse stops falling on dirt and starts falling on a human being. His name is Cain. And he is angry, the way you have been angry, the specific, ugly anger of a person who is sure that someone else got what should have been his. His brother's offering was accepted. His was not. And God kindly, almost tenderly warns him. Sin is crouching at your door like an animal, and it wants you, but you can master it. That is grace, spoken to a man one step away from murder. And Cain hears it, and he walks out into a field with his brother anyway, and he kills him. And God comes again the way he came in the garden. Where is your brother? And Cain gives the answer every guilty heart has given ever since. Am I my brother's keeper? And God says, the blood is crying out from the ground, and then comes the curse. And notice, it is the same ground again. Now you are cursed from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Feel the weight of that. Cain is the first farmer in the Bible, and the curse takes the one thing he knows how to do. The dirt will no longer answer him. He is unmade as a worker, unmade as a brother, unmade as a son. And he cries out. And this is one of the saddest lines in all of Scripture. My punishment is more than I can bear. And here's the part the story makes absolutely sure you do not miss. The very next thing God does is protect him. God puts a mark on Cain so that no one who finds him will kill him. The mark is not a brand of shame. The mark is a shield. Even on the first murderer, even under the curse, God's instinct is to guard the cursed man's life. Tuck that away, because the whole Bible is the story of a God who keeps reaching toward the very people his own justice has condemned. And then a few generations down the line, something happens that I want you to watch very closely, because it is the curse turned upside down for the first time. There is a family, an old blind father named Isaac, 2 sons, Esau, the firstborn, the hunter, the hairy one, and Jacob, the younger, the schemer, the one holding the heel of his brother from the moment they were born. And the father is dying, and he wants to give the great blessing, the family blessing, the one that decides everything, to Esau. But the mother, Rebekah, wants it for Jacob, so she cooks up a deception. She dresses Jacob in his brother's clothes, wraps his arms in goat skin so the blind old man will feel hair and think it is Esau. And Jacob hesitates. He says, "What if my father touches me and knows? Then I will bring a curse on myself and not a blessing." And listen to what his mother says. She says, "My son, let your curse be on me, only obey me. Let your curse be on me." Do you hear that? Hold that thought, because it is going to detonate at the end of this video. A mother looks at her son, who is terrified of catching a curse, and she says, "Give it to me. Put it on my shoulders. I will take the weight so you can have the blessing." It is a crooked, broken, manipulative little scene full of lies and bad people. And buried right in the middle of it is the whole gospel in 7 words. Let your curse be on me. Somebody standing in the gap. Somebody saying, I will carry what is coming to you so that what is yours can be a blessing instead of a curse. Remember her voice? You're going to hear it again in a garden from someone far greater. And this is where it gets remarkable, because the next man does not catch a curse from anyone. He calls it down on himself. His name is Job, and he was the most blessed man in the East, until, in a matter of days, he lost his children, his wealth, his health, everything but his life, and a wife who looked at him sitting in the ashes, scraping his sores with a piece of broken pottery, and said the cruelest 7 words in the book: curse God and die. Just give up. Spit at heaven and let it end. And Job will not. But the grief still breaks out of him. And when it does, it comes out as a curse, aimed not at God and not at another person, but at his own existence. He opens his mouth and curses the day he was born. the day perish on which I was born. Let that day be darkness. Let gloom and deep shadow claim it. Maybe you know that prayer. Maybe you have prayed some version of it in the worst hour of your own night. The wish that you could reach back and unhappen yourself, erase the day, blot out the calendar. That is a man cursing his own birthday because the pain has become heavier than the gift of being alive. And here is what most people never notice about the book of Job. God lets him say all of it. God does not strike him for it. The most patient man in the Bible spends most of the book furious and bleeding and demanding answers. And at the end, God does not call him a sinner for the grief. He calls him the one who spoke what was right. There is room in the God of the Bible for the person whose pain comes out as a curse. He is not fragile. He can hold your worst night without flinching. The next curse, though, shaped whole nations, and it has been misused more than almost any verse in the Bible, so I want to walk it carefully. The flood has come and gone. Noah and his sons step off the ark into a scrubbed clean world. And Noah, the hero, the one righteous man, plants a vineyard, gets drunk, and passes out naked in his tent. His son Ham sees him and, instead of covering him, goes and tells his brothers, mocking. The other two walk in backward with a garment, so they will not even see their father's shame, and they cover him. And when Noah wakes and learns what happened, he speaks a curse. But notice exactly who he curses. Not Ham. He curses Ham's son, Canaan. Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers. Now here's what you have to understand, because for centuries, wicked men ripped this verse out of its place and used it to justify enslaving human beings. And that is a lie this text never told. This is not about skin. It is not about race. The curse names a specific people, the Canaanites, the nations Israel would later meet in the land, nations known across the ancient world for child sacrifice and cruelty. It is a prophecy about a civilization's choices, not a verdict on anyone's color. Anyone who told you otherwise was doing exactly what those Egyptian priests did, taking the power of a word and smashing it over the head of an innocent. Pay attention to this because it matters for everything that follows. A curse in the Bible is never about where you were born. It is always about what is done. And the whole point of the story bending toward the cross is that even the deepest curse can be undone. If this is landing, do me a favor and hit subscribe and leave one word in the comments. Just the word Eden, so I know you have been here since the garden. It genuinely helps these reach the people who need them most. Now let me show you the strangest curse in the entire Bible, the one that would not work. There's a king named Balak, and he is terrified. He rules the land of Moab, and he has watched this enormous nation of former slaves come marching up out of the desert, and they have already crushed every army that stood in their way. Balak knows he cannot beat them with swords, so he reaches for the other weapon, the ancient weapon. He sends for a man, a professional, a man whose entire reputation is built on the belief that his curses come true. His name is Balaam, and here's something that should make you sit up. We are not only sure Balaam existed because of the Bible. In 1967, in a place called Deir Allah in modern-day Jordan, Archaeologists found writing on a ruined wall, ancient plaster centuries old, and the text on that wall tells a story about a seer, and the seer's name, written there in ink, older than most of the Old Testament, is Balaam, son of Beor, a man the Bible names, named again on a wall by people who were not Israelites and had no reason to flatter Israel's God. That is the kind of detail that should make you lean in. This man was real and feared across the whole region. So Balak hires him. "Curse this nation for me," he says, "and I will make you rich beyond counting." And Balaam saddles his donkey and rides out to do it. And on the road, something happens that is so strange people laugh at it until they realize it is the most serious thing in the chapter. The donkey stops. The donkey sees something Balaam cannot see. The angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword. 3 times the animal turns aside, and 3 times Balaam beats it. And then God opens the donkey's mouth, and it speaks. "What have I done to you, that you have beaten me these 3 times?" And only then are Balaam's own eyes opened, and he sees the blade that had been waiting for him the entire time. Here's what you are not supposed to miss in that scene. The pagan prophet, the famous seer, the man who sees what others cannot, is blinder than his own animal. The donkey sees God. The seer sees nothing. And that is the Bible, quietly telling you exactly what it thinks of all this curse machinery. The man who sells curses for a living cannot even see the danger standing in his own road. And so Balaam goes up on the mountain to curse Israel. And he opens his mouth, and a blessing comes out. Balak is furious. He drags him to another mountain, a better view. Try again. Balaam opens his mouth, and out comes a richer blessing than the first. A 3rd mountain, a 3rd time. And Balaam finally says the line that snaps the whole ancient system in half. "How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced?" Do you hear it? The most powerful curse merchant in the known world stands on a mountain paid in gold, fully intending to destroy a nation, and he cannot, because no human curse can stick to a people God has chosen to bless. The blessing is stronger than the curse. Hold that. We are going to need it before the night is over. But it gets stranger because the curse does not always come from a king with money or a prophet for hire. Sometimes it comes from a giant with a sword. There is a valley and 2 armies frozen on either side of it, and one enormous man walking out into the middle every morning for 40 days, daring anyone alive to fight him. And one afternoon, a teenager shows up with no armor and 5 smooth stones. And when Goliath sees this boy coming, the Bible records exactly what he does. He curses David by his gods. He calls down every dark power he knows on the head of a shepherd. The last weapon the giant reaches for, before the stone ever leaves the sling, is a curse. And the curse does nothing. The stone finds the gap in the helmet, and the most feared man in the Philistine army goes down face first into the dirt his own gods could not save him from. And it is not the only time a curse was thrown at David. Years later, David is an old king now, fleeing his own capital because his son has tried to seize the throne. And as he walks the road in grief, A man named Shimei comes out and throws stones at him and curses him to his face. "Get out, you man of blood," he screams. And one of David's soldiers reaches for his sword and says, "Let me go over and cut off his head." And listen to what the king says. He says, "Leave him, let him curse. If the Lord has told him to, who am I to stop him?" And the king walks on down the road, absorbing the curse in silence, refusing to answer it with a blade. Watch that posture. A king, falsely accused, taking the curse and saying nothing. We're going to see a greater king do the very same thing on a far worse road very soon. Now I have to show you the curses that did land because the Bible is honest. And not every story ends with the stone flying true and the curse bouncing off. When Joshua and Israel brought down the walls of Jericho, Joshua spoke a curse over the ruins. He said, "Cursed before the Lord is the man who rises up and rebuilds this city. He will lay its foundation at the cost of his firstborn son and set up its gates at the cost of his youngest." And those ruins sat untouched for centuries, until generations later, a man named Heel of Bethel decided he did not believe in old curses. He decided to rebuild Jericho, and the Bible records it with a chill that runs down the spine. He laid the foundation, and his firstborn son died. He set up the gates, and his youngest son died. Exactly as it had been spoken generations earlier by a man Heel never met. There's the part you are not told in Sunday school. The curse waited. It sat in the dust of those ruins for hundreds of years, patient as a coiled snake, and the moment a man stepped over the line, it struck. And the curse on Jericho touched one more man on the very day the walls came down, because God had declared the whole city devoted. The Hebrew word is cherem, set apart for destruction, every scrap of its silver and gold off limits, deadly to touch. And one soldier, a man named Achan, walked through the ruins and saw a beautiful robe and a wedge of gold. And he could not help himself. He took them and buried them under his tent. And the next battle, a small one, an easy one, Israel lost, and men died because one man had reached out and grabbed the cursed thing and hidden it in the dark. The whole nation carried the weight of one man's hidden hand in the dirt. Do not miss this. The curse is never as private as the person who picks it up believes it is. It always costs more than the one who reaches for it. And sometimes the price is not death at all. Sometimes it is something you wear on your own skin for the rest of your life. There was a great commander named Naaman, a foreign general, who came to the prophet Elisha covered in leprosy and was healed, washed clean in the Jordan 7 times, his skin like a child's again. And Naaman, overwhelmed, tried to pay the prophet with silver and gold and fine clothing. And Elisha refused all of it, because the grace of God is not for sale. But Elisha had a servant named Gehazi, and Gehazi watched all that wealth ride away, and something curdled inside him. So he ran after Naaman and he lied. He said his master had changed his mind and needed a little silver and a couple of garments for some unexpected guests. And Naaman gladly gave him double. And Gehazi hid it and came back and stood in front of Elisha as if nothing had happened. And Elisha said, "Where have you been?" "Nowhere," said Gehazi. And the prophet said the words that ended him. "Did not my heart go with you? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever. And Gehazi walked out of that room white as snow. The leprosy that had left the foreigner found the greedy servant. He sold the holy for silver, and the curse he caught was the exact disease that grace had just lifted off another man. If you have made it this far with me, comment the word thread below, because the thread is about to pull tight, and I want to know who is still holding the other end. Because there is one more curse in the Old Testament you have to understand, and it is the biggest one of all. It is not on a single person, it is on a whole nation, and they bring it down on their own heads on purpose. When Israel finally entered the land, God told them to do something staggering. He told them to stand half the tribes on one mountain, Mount Gerizim, and half on another mountain across the valley, Mount Ebal. And from one mountain they would shout the blessings, all the good that comes from walking with God. And from the other mountain they would shout the curses, every consequence of turning away. Cursed is the one who does this. Cursed is the one who does that. And after every single curse, the entire nation, standing in that valley between the two mountains, was commanded to answer out loud with one word, Amen. So be it. The people themselves agreed to the terms. They signed the contract with their own voices, echoing off the rock. If we keep covenant, blessing. If we break it, the curse is ours. And we said so. And then read the list of those curses in the book of Deuteronomy, and it goes on and on and on. A long, dark catalog of everything that will fall on a people who walk away from the God who saved them. And here is the unbearable part. They could not keep it. Nobody could. The law was perfect and the people were not. And so the very contract they shouted amen to became, slowly, over centuries, a noose. The Apostle Paul would later name it exactly. He called it the curse of the law. Not because the law was bad, the law was holy, but because a perfect standard hung over imperfect people becomes a sentence of death. Every honest person who has ever tried to be good enough and failed knows the valley between the two mountains. You know the amen. And you know the noose. Hold that word, the curse of the law. Because in about 5 minutes, a man is going to take it off your neck and put it around his own. Quick word, and then we reach the cross. If these videos mean something to you, the single most helpful thing you can do is share this one with somebody you know is carrying a weight tonight. You never know which video lands on the right night for the right person. But before we get to the hill, there is one more moment out in that long desert you have to see, because it is the strangest cure in the entire Old Testament, and it is the exact shape of the cross. The people had grumbled against God one too many times, and the Bible says he sent venomous snakes among them, fiery serpents, biting in the camp, and people were falling in the dust, with the venom already in their blood, dying where they dropped. Picture the panic of it. Picture a mother holding a child whose leg has already gone cold, screaming for someone, anyone, to do something. And the people come running to Moses and beg him to make it stop. And God gives Moses an instruction that makes no sense at all, until the day, more than 1,000 years later, when it suddenly makes all the sense in the world. He says, make a serpent of bronze. Make an image of the very thing that is killing you. Put it up on a pole and lift it high in the middle of the camp. And anyone who's been bitten, anyone already dying, let them just look up at it, and they will live. Sit with how strange that is. The cure for the snakebite was a snake. God told them to take the symbol of the curse, the serpent, the same creature from the garden, the oldest enemy in the whole Bible, and lift it up where every dying person could see it. And the people did not have to climb to it. They did not have to earn it. They did not have to scrub the venom out of their own blood first. They only had to turn their heads and look, and live. Some, I am sure, were too proud to look at something so foolish, and they died with the cure in plain sight. But the ones who looked, the weakest, the youngest, the ones with minutes left, they lived. And here's why I am telling you this now, on the road to the cross. Because more than 1,000 years later, on a night in Jerusalem, Jesus sat in the dark with a religious leader named Nicodemus. And he reached back and picked up this exact story. He said, "As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever looks to him should not perish, but have eternal life." Do you hear what he is telling you? He is the bronze serpent. He becomes the very image of the curse, the thing that has been killing the whole human race since the garden, lifted up on a pole in front of the entire world, so that anyone already dying of the venom can simply look and be healed. The cursed thing raised high becomes the only cure. Keep that picture burning behind your eyes, because we are about to watch it happen for real. Now, the fig tree. It is the last week of his life. Jesus is walking into Jerusalem in the morning, and he is hungry, and he sees a fig tree in full leaf by the road. Now, a fig tree in full leaf is making a promise. The leaves say, "There's fruit here." So he goes to it, and there is nothing. Leaves and not one fig. All advertisement, no bread. And Jesus speaks to the tree. "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And the next morning the disciples walk past, and the tree is withered from the roots up, dead where it stands. And people read that and think it is the one petty thing Jesus ever did. Lost his temper at a tree. But you have followed the whole pattern now, so you can see what they cannot. He is not throwing a tantrum. He is preaching the loudest sermon of his life without saying a word. Because what is a fig tree covered in leaves with no fruit? It is the religion of his day. A nation full of show, full of leaves, full of robes and rules and loud prayers on the street corner, and no actual fruit, no mercy, no justice, no love. He is acting out a curse on empty religion, 3 days before empty religion would put him on a cross. This is not a man losing patience with a plant. This is the last warning, dressed as a miracle. And there is one more man who walks into the curse that week with his eyes open. His name is Judas. He sells the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver, the price, in their law, of a slave. And after he does it, the horror of it crushes him, and he throws the silver back onto the temple floor and goes out and ends his own life. And in the very first chapter of Acts, when the disciples are trying to make sense of it, Peter reaches back into an old psalm of David, an old curse, and applies it to Judas. Let his place be deserted. Let another take his office. The oldest curses in the songs of Israel come home to roost on the man who handed over the Messiah. And there is the whole pattern one last time standing right next to the cross. Every curse so far has fallen on the guilty, the serpent, the murderer, the fence jumper, the thief, the traitor, the fruitless tree. The curse has always landed exactly where it was earned. And then, on a Friday afternoon, it stops doing that. Here is where the whole Bible turns inside out. And I need you to slow all the way down with me. Because if you have ever felt cursed, if you have ever felt like there's something wrong woven down into the very bottom of you that you did not choose and cannot fix, this is the part that was written for you. The man who cursed the fig tree is now hanging on a Roman cross. And of all the ways the ancient world had to kill a person, crucifixion on a wooden pole carried one extra horror for a Jewish man, and it comes straight out of the law of Moses. In the book of Deuteronomy, there is a line: anyone who is hung on a pole is under God's curse. The Hebrew is blunt. A hanged man is accursed of God. So to a Jewish crowd watching a man die nailed to a tree, the message was not only that he was a criminal, it was that he was, by the very words of their own scripture, cursed by God himself. And the Apostle Paul, a man who had memorized that law, a man who once hunted Christians because he was certain they followed a cursed criminal, Paul takes that exact verse and writes the most staggering sentence in the New Testament. He says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. The Greek word is katara, the curse. And Paul does not say Jesus got near it. He says Jesus became it. He climbed the fence on purpose. He stepped into the place of every guilty person who ever lived. And he let the full weight of error, every binding curse since the garden, come down on his own head. This is not a spell. It is not a metaphor. It is not a loophole. It is a trade. The single most expensive trade in the history of the universe. And now go all the way back to the heel, the one I told you to hold on to an hour ago. In the garden, God said the serpent would strike the heel of the woman's offspring, and that offspring would crush the serpent's head. Look at the cross. The serpent strikes. The heel is wounded. The man bleeds. He dies. For one Friday afternoon, it looks like the snake has finally won. But a wound to the heel is not a wound to the head. The serpent spent everything it had, every curse it had ever thrown across every page, and all it managed to do was bruise a heel. And in the very same blow, the same death, the head of the serpent is crushed. The curse pours itself out on the only person it could not hold and breaks. And do you remember the thorns? The thorns that came up out of the cursed ground all the way back in Genesis, the symptom of a broken world. On the day he died, the soldiers wove the thorns of the curse into a crown and pressed it down onto his head. He wore the curse of the ground as a crown. He took the very symbol of Eden's wound and let it draw his blood. There is nothing accidental in this. The whole Bible has been one long arrow, and here is the target it was always pointed at. And do you remember Rebecca, the mother who said, "Let your curse be on me, only obey me"? On the night before that cross, Jesus knelt in a garden, another garden, and the weight of every curse in this video pressed down on him until he sweat blood, and he said, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." And then he said the words Rebecca only dimly pictured, "Not my will, but yours. Let the curse be on me. Put it on my shoulders. I will take the weight so they can have the blessing instead." The crooked little scene in Isaac's tent was a shadow. This was the substance. I want to bring this all the way down to where you actually live, because maybe the word curse still sounds like ancient history to you. So let me put it where you can feel it. You know how in some families there is a thing that just keeps coming back? The drinking that skips no generation? The rage the father had and the father before him? And now you catch yourself raising your voice in the exact tone you swore you never would. The leaving, the lying, the same wound handed down in the bloodline like a piece of furniture nobody wants, but everyone inherits anyway. You did not choose it. You were born into it. And there are nights you have felt the truth of it settle onto you like a verdict. This is just what my family is. This is just what I am. That is what a curse feels like from the inside. Something old, something you did not start, pressing down on a life you're only trying to live. And here is the gospel the entire Bible has been driving toward, the thing I most want you to hear tonight. You do not have to carry it, because someone already did. The chain that runs back through your family, back through history, back through the traitor and the thief and the giant and the murderer, all the way back to a garden and a snake and a single spoken word. That chain has one end nailed to a cross. He became the curse, so the curse would have nowhere left to land on you. He did not make the live wire less deadly. He grabbed it with both hands and let it kill him, so that when you reach for God now, all you touch is grace. And the Bible does not end at the cross. It ends with a city and a river and a tree whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. And then John writes the line that has been waiting since Genesis chapter 3. He looks at the new world, the restored world, the world with no more death and no more crying and no more pain. And he writes 11 words. And there shall be no more curse. The word arar, the word that has stalked every single page from the garden forward, gone. Not managed, not survived. Gone. Pulled up out of the ground by the roots, like a fig tree withering in reverse, like a thorn bush dying, so a garden can finally grow back over the place where it stood. So let me give you 3 things to carry out of this. And the third one is the one I actually need you to hear. The first is the truth about the topic itself. The curse in the Bible was never random, and it was never magic. From the serpent in Eden to the giant in the valley to the servant with the stolen silver, every curse landed on a real boundary that a real person crossed. God is not unstable. He does not throw words around like an Egyptian priest smashing bowls in the dark. He is consistent enough that you can trace the pattern across the entire Bible, from the first page to the last. The curse is the weight of a broken world taken seriously. And the moment you understand that, you understand why it could not simply be waved away. A wound that deep had to be paid for by somebody. The second is what this means for you. You have spent your life around a thin, modern idea of a curse. Bad luck, a jinx, a black cat, a string of unlucky days. Throw it out. The only curse the Bible ever takes seriously is the one running underneath all of it. The separation between you and the God who made you, and the brokenness, it leaks into everything you touch. And that is the exact curse that was lifted on the cross. You were not handed a horseshoe. You were handed a pardon, signed in the blood of the only innocent man who ever lived. And the third, the one I want ringing in your chest after the screen goes dark. Whatever you think is woven into the bottom of you, whatever pattern you are certain you will hand to your own children the way it was handed to you, whatever you have decided in the worst hours of the night is simply and permanently what you are. Hear this. The oldest curse in the world was broken by a man wearing a crown of the very thorns it grew. A mother once whispered, said, "Let the curse be on me." And 2,000 years later, the Son of God knelt in a garden and made it true for you. The serpent struck his heel, and he crushed its head, and he did it with your name held in his mind. You are not the family curse. You are not the worst thing your blood has ever done. You were bought on purpose by a love that walked straight into the curse so that you would never have to live one more day under it. Now, I want to hear from you, and I read every comment on these. Of every curse in this video, the serpent, Cain, the giant, the rebuilt city, the stolen silver, the fig tree, the 2 mountains, which one surprised you the most? And which one hit closest to something you're carrying right now? Tell me below. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those comment sections where people meet each other in the dark and find out they were never as alone as they thought. Because here's the last thing, and then I will let you go. The Bible opens with a curse spoken over a garden. It closes with that curse erased from a city. And the whole long, bloody, beautiful distance between those 2 pages is the story of a God who wouldn't leave you fenced in. He came down into the dirt where it all began. He took the thorns. He took the tree. He took the word, and he carried it all the way out past the edge of the world to a place no curse has ever followed him back from. And the next time you feel that old weight settle onto your shoulders in the dark, the verdict, the certainty that this is just who you are and always will be, I want you to remember a garden and a crown of thorns and 11 words written on the last page about a world where the weight is finally permanently gone. No more curse. He made sure of it with his own 2 hands